Welcome to a new episode of TV-Helden, the industry podcast for all those who are professionally involved in television. My name is Christian Heinkele. And now I'm looking forward to a very special guest. He actually wanted to become a journalist, but RTL brought him straight from his doctorate to Cologne Deutsch. He once made RTL famous worldwide and now knows media companies, collecting societies from the inside and copyright law like no other. So it's no wonder that he also teaches the same subject as a professor in Cologne. Now he is setting off to new adventures because he is a mountaineer and is now aiming high with artificially generated speech. Welcome, Professor Dr. Stefan Sporn.
Hello, Christian. Good to see you.
Nice to have you here, Stefan. I haven't mentioned your position description today. Stefan, I can talk to you about many TV topics. I'll certainly leave copyright to the professional Christoph Goller with his podcast series TV-Helden Legal. The art of dubbing, synchronization, is another topic that we can talk about, and that will be our topic today. And how you and your company want to make this art more efficient and simplify it with the help of artificial intelligence or AI.
Everything. That means faster, cheaper, simpler, but still really good.
Okay. How do you feel more comfortable at the moment if I address you as professor or CEO of a startup?
Oh, you can just leave both of that out. I'm still who I've always been to you. And the same goes for most other people.
Wonderful. Yes, exactly. So I looked at your CV again in advance, and I believe I may say that to you. You're a real media veteran. You've been in the business for over 30 years. Looking back now, how has the television business changed? Has it become easier or more difficult to be successful in television?
Well, Christian, I'll start as a lawyer. Let's define television. So, if we agree that by this we are talking about moving image programs these days, then I would say being successful has never been easy. But I think the opportunities today are simply more diverse. And therefore, the chances of success are also significantly higher. Today, linear television has no capacity shortage in terms of broadcasting channels. We have something as crazy as the internet with YouTube and so on and so forth. That means the variety of possibilities is huge, and that makes it a bit easier. But creating good content is never going to be easy.
You have also been a professor for media and copyright law at the TH Cologne for 12 years now. The main keywords here are platform concepts, user interfaces, and above all, artificial intelligence. Would you say that copyright and media law in Germany is lagging behind technology?
Yes, that's always a bit of a dismissive comment about law in general. If you will, law always lags behind any kind of development. That is just the nature of things. No matter how well laws are drafted, for example, by being open to change, it is simply impossible for a legislator to anticipate all possible developments. This is why regulations in media and copyright law, where technological changes are particularly relevant, must be constantly reviewed and, if necessary, adapted. But I think it's very important to say that we are not in a legal vacuum with nothing that is currently happening. In fact, I think we have a particularly good copyright law, and if necessary, we have to go to court to get clarity on its interpretation and application. That's just a completely normal procedure.
As I said at the beginning, there are an incredible number of topics to talk to you about. Let's take a brief look at your 30 years in the media industry. You were a journalist at a newspaper, you were a journalist in radio and television, a lawyer at the Institute for European Media Law, EMR. You were at WDR, Managing Director at the former VG Media, now Corinth Media, COO at Splendid Media AG. In addition to all these positions, you spent a total of 22 years in various positions at RTL Deutschland. That's also where we got to know each other. I was at Eutelsat at the time and was looking for channels that could be utilized internationally, and you were Managing Director of RTL International GmbH and licensed RTL channels worldwide, and as I said in the intro, also made them known worldwide. Well, and now you've founded your own AI company in the audio sector. Tell us, how did that come about? What does your company do?
Yeah, the story is quite funny. Well, one of my characteristics is that I'm always kind of curious. That's why I was a journalist for a long time, and I think it's one of the most important qualities of a journalist to always remain curious. I can't change that about myself either. In my last days at RTL, I learned about a project in which the voices of presenters were cloned and used as synthetic voices for the read aloud function in the NTV app. I thought that was extremely cool. I had someone show me how it works. A great colleague developed the idea. Then I left RTL, and a few months later I was managing director of a dubbing studio. I had to take a bit of a mental break and thought, how could the whole thing work out here? And how and to what extent can AI audio influence, question, and perhaps even turn the entire business model of traditional dubbing on its head? Yeah, well, that's something you need to know if you're in a traditional dubbing studio. You have to find out. And that's what I tried to do with a small team. We spent months researching, testing, trying, and experimenting. And the results that came out were really impressive to me in terms of quality. And that was the overall conclusion for me. I believe that the audio industry is very likely at the beginning of a major disruption. AI, audio, and synthetic or synthesized voices will change the industry permanently and quickly. So, after I left the company, I finally decided with 2 partners to turn this insight into something, to accept the challenge and enter this market with AIL Audio Innovation Lab GmbH. As you asked, the company specializes in everything that can be produced using voices. The only difference is that we focus entirely on AI processes and AI-generated, synthetic or synthesized voices to meet our customers' requirements. And that ranges from the dubbing of a film, a series, the voiceover of a documentary, to new language versions for YouTube videos, games, or even podcasts like this one, if you like.
You don't have to go into great detail about it now, but I could, of course, imagine that if you were in, as you said, a traditional dubbing studio or a company that made its business in this way, you are, of course, also in the typical investor's dilemma. In other words, you earn a lot of money with a traditional art or business, and the step of adopting this disruptive technology is, of course, extremely difficult for you because you are, in fact, investing in your own replacement. And that's always incredibly difficult for companies. That's why there's this investor's dilemma. You said that you are convinced that disruption is coming. So this affects a whole sector of the industry. Dubbing is an important aspect, especially in the German media landscape. Now let's take another look. How good is AI audio? What can it do already? What can it do that a real voiceover artist can already do naturally today, and what the AI has to be able to do?
I actually think that the AI audio results are impressively good. And I think it's important to actually listen to something once in order to form an opinion about it. That's often the case in life. Many people don't do this because they don't want to. There are media research results, for example, from the State Media Authority here in North Rhine-Westphalia, and they are based on earlier work from this research. We did a voiceover of a documentary in a traditional way and in an AI way, but always with the same voice. What did the research reveal? Viewers can no longer distinguish between real and synthetic. And I enjoy testing this again and again. It's not just for fun, I also want to make sure. And that's why I always show students or potential customers demos that we make in the form of a blind tasting. In other words, I have a real version and I have a synthetic version with the same voice, which we have then synthesized or rather cloned. And I then ask them to tell which version is which without saying beforehand. And the result is always in favor of the AI version. That means that the results of the State Media Authority's research are repeatedly confirmed for me in this way.
Fascinating. Now I'm going to ask you specifically, when I imagine a synchronization like this, the first important thing is that the AI also reproduces the expression, the facial expressions, the feeling of the actor or actress. Can it do that?
It can do that amazingly well. It really can do that amazingly well. And these are also the secrets of the AI software producers that I can't look into and that I can't disclose, not even to myself. I can only say that what comes out of it is incredibly impressive. But if it's not great, then it needs people who can make it better. And that's something you absolutely have to remember here.
And then you feed it with video and text, or only text, or how can I imagine that?
The individual AI systems actually work differently.
It will certainly come down to the fact that such an AI system in a really highly developed stage will look closely at both. In the truest sense of the word, It will look at both the video and the text and how this text is performed, and then use this mixture to create a new synthetic version that is as close as possible to the original.
On issues such as the translation of cultural allusions and humor already work with AI, just as they do with human VO talents?
There are limits, and you have basically identified these limits. So, innuendo, linguistic peculiarities, slang, youth language that has only just emerged, that only exists in one language and in no other, are things that no AI can do. And this is where humans come into play again and again, who have to make something out of what the AI suggests or simply change the AI or alter the AI's results. Which means that humans still play a crucial role in the entire process and will continue to do so for a long time to come.
On the other hand, it has to be said that exactly what I've just asked and what you've answered is something that humans can hardly do today. That's why we like to watch the program in the original language, because you simply cannot translate some things. You've already touched on the fact that people still need to make adjustments or be involved. You've also repeatedly mentioned the human being who can also make adjustments, but that probably shouldn't be the aim of the whole audio process. Tell us, how fully automated is the process? How fully automated can it be? And do VO talents need to fear for their jobs? Or does it need humans?
AI audio systems will certainly fundamentally change many things.
It is only slowly becoming clear or recognizable how exactly. And everything that is being articulated as a concern by the humans in this production process, I totally understand. Here comes something new, something unknown that would change many things, and that always triggers fears. I think that's completely normal. But I think you have to deal with it in a very practical way and think carefully about what is really affected here. I repeat my statement that the human being remains crucial for a high-quality AI audio product. Simply throwing something in and getting a great output doesn't work. Not if it is to be good and isn't to produce any nonsense. To be concrete, this means that we still need good VO talents. If possible, we don't want to work with the voices provided by the AI systems for quality reasons. Anyone who has ever done that will know what I mean. You hear them every day on TikTok and Instagram. And if you want something original, it's better not to use them. At least not if you have high-quality standards. This means, of course, that you then fall back on traditional voice actors. The main difference is they only come to the studio once, only to record them and then synthesize their voice. There's just no debating that, that's how it is. What is also crucial, however, is a professional group that does not yet officially exist, namely the AI audio producer. Meaning, AI is not only eliminating jobs, it is also creating entirely new professions, namely the one I just mentioned. What does this person do? This person combines the roles of director and sound engineer, who otherwise work together in the control room in traditional recording sessions. This person basically talks to the AI and gets the best results out of it. So what the prompter does, creating an image with the corresponding AI software, the AI audio producer does with the AI audio system. It's not classic prompting, but it goes a bit in that direction. And the better the producer is, the better the result. And we will need many, many of these people in the future. So again, AI doesn't just do away with functions, it also creates new ones. And I repeat myself like a broken record. The human being remains the key to a good result.
Exactly. And what does the human do? Do they then assign the voice to the actor? Because I think that's crucial. The action hero, the action heroine, they can't come along with a whimsical voice. Do they do that, for example?
No, you assign the voice together with the customer. So the customer decides they have 3 options. For example, the customer says, I'll just use any default voice from the AI system. I don't think that's good, but the customer can then decide for themselves. Just in terms of quality, that's certainly not the best solution. The next possible option is that they say, as it's usual in traditional dubbing, I want a specific voiceover artist. I want this exact voice. Then we have to look for this voice in a synthesized form. Meaning, if we don't already have them, we bring them into the studio and record them in order to then synthesize them. Or the third option, which I personally very much believe in, is that the actors in the film, in the series or the documentary want their own voice to be used and not some dubbing voice. Maybe I'll get round to that later. So, once the decision has been made, It's all about creating the best possible audio result with this voice. And the AI, believe it or not, still makes a lot of mistakes with pronunciation, with intonation, with how emotional something should be. And these are all things that the AI audio producer has to tease out of the software. And this works. But the only way to achieve the best result is in principle a constant dialogue between the AI and the audio producer.
How nice it would have been if this technology had existed a few years ago and we could have heard Jon Snow's original voice in German. Game of Thrones already totally convinces me. Also, Stefan, I can think of one more thing. The synchronization of the actor's voice and lips is probably brutally difficult for actors. Is that also one of those things? How does the AI adapt?
It is quite clear that we can't do this any better with AI. Actually, it is quite on the contrary. We can't do any better with AI than an experienced author can. When it really comes to lip sync, we can only do the following. We basically make a raw translation with an AI, and this must then be edited for lip synchronicity by a trained and experienced human. There is no other way. As things stand at the moment, no AI can produce lip sync in audio in a meaningful way.
Not yet. We'll see what comes next. After all, development is rapid.
What may come is not that an AI will create lip synchronicity through the audio. I firmly believe that video editing based on text will come. Various companies are working on this. The results are already really impressive. Unfortunately, it's still very expensive, very slow, and very time-consuming. But that you can lip sync a German language version from an original English film without noticing it, or if you want to notice it, then you'll notice it. That's already possible. And it will come. It's just still very time-consuming. But that's where I see the future.
There are enough examples on the internet where you can see how the mouth moves to the right language. But, it may be his mouth, but it was somehow artificially put into motion afterwards. You mentioned one thing, the voice of the actors and actresses. There is the case of the US actress Jennifer Lawrence, whose voice may have been used by OpenAI without being asked. The industry is concerned about this. How do you prevent misuse of voices?
Obviously, we can only do things that are within the scope of our possibilities. We will not be able to prevent anyone who wants to do some nonsense with voices outside of our framework. But what we can do, we will do. In addition to the legal framework, which we naturally adhere to, we have also imposed binding ethical guidelines on ourselves. They apply internally, but they also apply to our contracts with our partners and our clients because we use them as an annex. They therefore also have an external effect. In concrete terms, this means that we would not use certain voices even if they were commissioned, and that we do not use voices without consent. As you have to assume, I don't know all the details, but it looks a bit like her voice really was used without being asked. We wouldn't do that. In other words, we have our clear rules, we stick to them, and of course we hope to send a signal to the market that other market participants work in the same way. But these are also our own limits.
All right, I understood that. You've also totally convinced me that I can listen to Jennifer Lawrence, for example, in 1,000 different languages and always with her own original voice. Tell me, what are the advantages of AI audio? Why do you need it?
So, in short form and somewhat bold. A synthesized voice, yours, mine, lives forever. A recent example that has been talked about a lot in the industry, Hans Claren, the voice of Pumuckl, lives on in the new RTL series episodes. I think that's a great use case. Our voices don't change. But that's a problem with real voices, for example, voice changes in puberty or illness. And as longtime participants in the industry, we both know how challenging, let me put it in neutral terms, it is when you have to recast a permanent cast in a movie or series. So the voice of Jennifer Lawrence in Germany would no longer be whoever it is, and then you're in big trouble. I can remember that I once had to recast the voice of Columbo on RTL. Oh dear. Also, we no longer have a problem with children's voices in production. Keyword FSK FSF 18 version. How difficult is it to produce something like this with children? The workflow is faster, more reliable, and of course cheaper in the end, with the same quality. And the last point is that we can work in many different languages. Multilingual. You no longer have to look for a studio in the USA or in Spain, Madrid, for an English or Spanish language version. It can all be done from Cologne.
Now let's talk about the rating 16 and 18. So you couldn't dub a horror movie with a child's voice in the past because the law for the protection of minors simply didn't allow it? Or what did you mean by that?
Well, you can. But you have to take special precautions so the children are protected while working, obviously. In certain instances, this means you can't show some passages. But how are you supposed to lip-sync those parts in a good way if you cannot show the material? These are real challenges. And children, we're talking a bit about child labor here, that has to be registered with the authorities. None of this is a complaint, please don't get me wrong. That's all very well and good, but it has to be registered and approved. Children are only allowed to work for a certain amount of time at a time. They have to be taken there and back. Parents have to look after them, of course. They can't lose track in school. And you have to incorporate all of this into a production process. Now, if you work with lots of children, you never really know exactly when you'll be finished.
Experience speaks for itself. Really interesting. Stefan, you mentioned Pumuckl. Is that already AI or how did they solve it?
I wasn't there. Of course, it wasn't done by us. It was before our time. What I do know is that they used a special process. But you'd really have to research that again, in which everything was recorded by an actor, meaning the whole thing. And that Hans Clarin's voice was then placed on top of it as the icing on the cake, so to speak. So that the whole thing, the whole tonality is based on Hans Clarin, but what is narrated comes from the actor. Just you cannot hear that. It now sounds like Hans. That's a process that we can also do. And it's in fact used a lot. Although it's actually only worthwhile in cases like this, if you can no longer get hold of the original talent and haven't synthesized him beforehand.
Okay. So, of course, I'm now more aware of the advantages. Of course, I can also imagine a good advantage, a good case of simply producing this podcast in several languages. That's why we decided to try it out. So, this podcast episode, dear listeners, now also exists in English in parallel with our synthesized voices. Now, it's up to you to give it a listen and let me know what you think. You've known my voice for many episodes, I hope, or for years. What do you think? How do you like it? Is it good, bad? Does it have potential? I would be really interested. Feel free to write me your opinion. Mail at tv-helden.com. Before we continue, I'd like to introduce you to the partner that makes this TV-Helden episode possible. Agile Content offers a complete white-label software-as-a-service product that delights millions of users worldwide. Whether you're a large or small network operator, Agile Content gives you the Tier 1 technology usually reserved for the biggest in the industry. Why Agile Content? It has proven itself globally, scaling solutions to meet the needs of operators of all sizes. Its super aggregation with the leading VOD services ensures that your customers have access to the best content. Everything on one platform, everything in one user interface. And best of all, with its fully transparent operational excellence model, Agile Content guarantees not only the highest quality, but also mutual growth. You can be sure that you have a partner at your side who understands your needs and supports you. This is because Agile Content itself is also an operator of direct-to-consumer platforms. So if you are looking for a reliable, scalable, and future-proof solution, take a look at Agile Content. Agile Content is also available in the German-speaking market, with pre-service products for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Find out more about Agile Content in episode 61, linked in the episode description, or send a message to mail at tv-helden.com. And now back to the episode. Okay, so I'm really excited about the result, not just from the survey, but in general. I haven't heard it yet because I'm recording right now, but soon I will. In general, I find it really exciting to release TV-Helden podcasts in English, Spanish, and Ancient Greek because it breaks the language barrier and allows me to reach more people with our content. If I want to do more episodes in the future, what will it take? How does that work?
The same way we're doing it right now. We take what we have recorded here in German and synthesize it through the AI so that it can speak like you and me. And as I said, we do that from the voice material from this podcast. That's enough. Then we take what we've spoken in German and have it translated into the language we want by an AI. In this case, I think we've agreed on English. And then we let the translated content be generated into a new language version with our voices. That's basically the way it works. But beware. Because the AI always makes mistakes, we both have to do two things. We always have to check the translation and then we have to check the language version afterwards. As we have already said several times, an AI is not perfect. In other words, we can't avoid that we have to sit down again to make sure that this AI doesn't say some nonsense in your voice or make funny pronunciation mistakes.
Okay, I'll delete ancient Greek, we'll leave it at English. But now I have the feeling that I'm making my voice available to the AI, this black box AI. I'll call it that deliberately. What ethical considerations play a role when using AI for dubbing, especially with regard to the right to my voice?
As I've said before, nothing without consent. Why? Your voice is part of your personal rights. This is protected by constitutional law and additionally by many lower laws. This means that your voice cannot be used without your consent. Without consent is not allowed. You have to ask. So that is an absolutely firm principle. And it has nothing to do with ethics, to be precise. It's the law. At least in Germany. I'm only speaking for Germany now. Well, we can also talk about Europe at this point. This applies throughout Europe. And if a talent does not want to be synthesized, then so be it. Everything remains the same for the speaker. Then it's just traditional. Let's say analog.
You are also a licensed lawyer in a Munich law firm specializing in copyright and media law. Do we need new rules for AI audio? What are the legal challenges?
Well, Christian, that's a really broad topic. There's a lot of discussion about it, and we probably need at least 3 more podcast episodes to do the topic justice. To cut a long story short, many AI topics are currently in court for clarification. I would say that it will be easier to judge whether legal adjustments are really needed or whether we simply already know how to deal with them on the basis of the incoming judgments. In my view, the decisive factor in the whole AI issue, and this has nothing to do with audio but applies to AI in general, is that creative people don't get left behind, and that there is an appropriate balance here, which ultimately means appropriate remuneration for use. And this is where I am most concerned with the question of whether and how remuneration should be paid when AI systems have been trained with copyrighted works, and I'm making this general now, i.e. works. I think that's the crux of the matter, and that applies in general. If we now only look at AI audio, then I think the whole thing can be broken down relatively easily for us in legal terms. Once again, no use without consent. Every use triggers appropriate compensation, period.
Got it. Great. Thank you very much. Now, we're probably looking at an era where content production is very easy and we're faced with hundreds of billions of petabytes of artificially generated content. How do you see the discussion about mandatory labeling for AI-created products?
This is also a very broad field, and I don't think there is a clear answer. I think we need to differentiate here. I'll take audio as an example because that's what we've been talking about the most right now. I think it's also clear there. Where I suggest that something was actually spoken by a person, specifically by a human being, and especially in a political context, but that was not really the case, I think there is a need for mandatory labeling. In other words, wherever it is relevant to the shaping of individual and public opinion. On the other hand, I don't see it as necessary for a dubbing of a film or a commercial, for example. In other words, I don't see a general need for mandatory labeling, but only for specific sensitive areas, because the voice of, let's say, Jennifer Lawrence, is already someone else today, and not Jennifer Lawrence. And we don't label that either. So whether I use an AI voice, or whether I use the voice of X or Y, it makes no relevant difference. But I believe that what really matters is where it becomes relevant for our public and individual opinion forming, meaning for our society and for our state. We are in a very sensitive area here, and in case of doubt, it must be labeled.
These are precisely the videos of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or Barack Obama that have become deepfake. Okay, I got that. How do you think things will develop? What specific plans does your company have to continue innovating in the field of dubbing? And what skills are you working on? What areas are you developing? Which of these skills are you developing into a unique selling point?
Our goals are basically the following. You always have to stay on top of the latest developments in AI audio systems. You have updates every week, which are often not even announced. So you have to go to the provider's website every day to see what's new and how it works and what it can do for me. You have to constantly work on improving the quality of the product. Obviously nothing special, but it's also not necessarily a given thing either. The same applies to workflows. A continuous improvement process is unavoidable. And specifically for us, we want our own voice library of real voiceover talents. Again, these are the real people we want to work with. And that's what I want to emphasize here. That also brings me to the penultimate point. That's the AI audio producer. I've already mentioned what this person does. We need to train them. We need to educate them. And what you just mentioned, which is still a bit of a vision for the future, but we also need to keep an eye on it, is the combination of audio and video editing. When will it be that a customer says, edit the audio and the video and make it lip sync for me?
Stefan, once again, in tune with the times. There is a lot of pioneering work to be done now. What percentage of newly produced content do you think will be synchronized by AI in Germany in 5 years' time?
You're not going to nail me down to percentages now, Christian. For that, you would have to make a bet with me. That may not go well. But let me put it this way. I'm convinced that the majority of voiceovers for documentaries and the like will be worked on with AI. With fiction, it will take a little longer because it really is more difficult. And the concerns in the entire industry still need to be worked through objectively and calmly first. But I believe that this will also change quickly because, and we've already mentioned this, I'm convinced that the original actors will love it if they can basically synchronize themselves using this technology. They will no longer need a voice that is the German voice of X or Y, it will be the actor or actress themselves. Once again, the voice is a central feature of personality. And why should I give it up in favor of any person's voice when it is possible for myself to speak German, English, Spanish, Japanese, or Chinese? If I can do that, then that's what I want. That's my hypothesis. And this also leads me to believe that AI will play a major role in the future, especially in the fictional sector. It starts with the voiceover of documentaries and will then continue intensively with fiction. And in 5 years' time, I can see AI voiceover being far more advanced. But I also think that fiction will already have a significant percentage of its work based on it.
I think you've won me over with that argument. I also believe that in the future, this branding, this brand building is already crucial, and it will become increasingly important to maintain and defend this brand purity. And since we are in a globalized world, it is, of course, the case that your voice not only exists in English, but in all the different languages, and that you bring what you are as an actress, as an actor, together with your voice to the screen globally in every country. That's a strong argument. Stefan, now that I have the expertise sitting opposite me, I am, of course, very interested in your opinion on the TV landscape, the moving image landscape, how it will change in the coming years, and which success factors will be decisive for success.
So, I firmly believe that people will continue to have an unbroken interest in content of all kinds. That will not change. Usage and offerings will certainly continue to change. It's somehow all relatively easy to predict. Personally, of course, I almost have to say this as an old TV man. I still firmly believe in linear TV. I also believe that it will remain relevant, but there will be changes there too. I no longer believe in a large number of linear specialty channels like we still have. Their content is simply not relevant enough to be used according to a predetermined program schedule. I mean, I can also watch it on demand. I think what is emerging technologically and is slowly working, namely individualized linear TV channels, is a very exciting trend that I personally believe in. Because it is possible thanks to AI and, of course, recommendation engines that are shaped by personal user behavior, which in turn are based on AI. And I also think it is likely that this will be implemented in a meaningful way. We already know the initial results and can try it out, so I believe that a trend will emerge. I also believe that non-linear platforms will continue to gain in importance. However, I firmly expect the market to consolidate. In the end, nobody can afford that much. Then there is the cost pressure, which has always existed and will always exist, and that will remain across the entire value chain. Of course, producers will also work with AI, which they have been doing and admitting for a long time, across all processing stages. It remains to be seen where they can gain something from this. In some cases, working with AI is even more complex and therefore more expensive than doing it normally. But even that is not unusual in change processes. In any case, I think it will change the visual experience. A bit like the switch from cartoons to animation, but perhaps more dramatic. And when it comes to the question of who will actually be successful, I don't think anything will change in essence. It will be the one who, given the technological framework, knows best how to inspire viewers with stories, entertain them with shows, and ultimately deliver the most relevant news.
You gave a very nice outlook in that you said, firstly, that you brought in a second use case of AI in your explanation that you believe, if I interpreted it correctly, in this Me, Myself and I channel, which provides the consumer with the individual, relevant and linear channel curated by the AI from all that content. I think that's very nice. And the other thing you say at the end, yes, but the decisive factor is always the quality of the whole thing, and that will prevail. And most likely there is also a clever mind behind that. Thank you very much, Stefan, for this interview. Thank you very much for the new horizons and insights that you have given me into the moving image industry. I am very excited to see how AI and your company in particular will change our industry. And I wish you and your partners much, much success.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the interview. Very exciting. And good luck with this really successful podcast and soon in English as well.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Support Christoph and me by giving this podcast 5 stars on Spotify or Apple. A short advertising block regarding my seminars. In the fall, there will be another TV Manager certificate course and, of course, workshops on successfully marketing TV products. If you are wondering how best to license content, how to put your TV platform on a legally secure footing, what rights the collecting societies issue, and what the current situation is in copyright protection and content licensing, then please send me an email at mail@tv-helden.com. Professor Dr. Stefan Sporn and I are currently designing a training course and are examining the demand. So if you are interested in such training, please get in touch. You can find out more at tv-academy.de. Academy with C and Y. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for listening. Yours, Christian.